Well hello, and welcome to Newhouse Esports Update. For the last episode, we took a look at sports games and their appeal to the new fans, because they might be similar to the sports that we watch on such a common basis. However, I want to take a look at some of the games that require significantly less talent, skill, whatever you want to call it, mechanics, and take instead a look at the games that require more of the mind than of the body. These, of course, are strategy games. I don't smoke. Strategy games are, admittedly, a very vague category, so I'll just define it as a game that requires more strategy than mechanical skill. This includes deck-building games, auto chess games, and other games that don't really have a main category. Let's first start with deck-building games. Deck builders are games that require cards as the primary method of winning the game. The gameplay is very similar to a traditional card game that you might play with your friends on a Saturday night, where each card has a different attribute or ability when played. But the real strategy comes with the ability to customize the deck and tailor it to your playstyle so you can win against another deck that may be built in a different way. It's all about the mentality of it, and less so about the actual gameplay itself. Some of the biggest online deck builder games would be Hearthstone and Legends of Runeterra. Hearthstone in particular owes a lot of the similarities and gameplay elements to the widely popular common deck building game Magic the Gathering, developed by Wizards of the Coast in the 90s and is still widely popular today. In Magic the Gathering, two players play against one another with decks that they have built themselves. Players use land, or essentially energy, to summon monsters, cast spells, and harm their opponents until one player comes out on top. Though there is an online version of Magic the Gathering, the game itself is most commonly played in person. Here's a very brief synopsis of what a game might typically look like. At the beginning of each game, both players start with 20 life and 7 cards in their hand. Player 1 will go first and will play a land card. This one has to enter tapped or tilted to the side. We'll get to that later. Player 2 also has a land in his pile, so he will play it. He can't do anything with it, so he'll pass the turn. Next, player 1 will untap his land and draw a card. He will then play one more land for his turn, tilt both of them or tap them, and play a creature. Now the creature cannot attack when it is created, so it'll just sit there for now. Player 2 will then draw a card, and then play a land for his turn. He will then use one of his lands to cast his own creature. And play will now pass to player 1. Player 1 untaps his lands, draws a card, plays one more land, and then will use 3 lands to cast another creature. He'll then use the first creature, now that it can attack, and swing at the other person. Player 2 will then use his character to block the damage, and both creatures are sent to the graveyard, or the discard pile. Later on, player 1 will play another creature, and will swing with the second one that he casted. This time around, player 2 has no blocks, so he will take 2 damage. Some cards have certain effects, such as this one that allows player 1 to look at the top 2 cards of his draw pile. He then has the option to put one or both of them at the bottom of his draw pile, which he does with this one, and the other one into exile. The game will continue until one player reaches 0 health, and the last person standing is the winner. The other type of strategy games that have a little bit of a following are auto chess games. These are positional strategy games where units are placed on a battlefield and they automatically fight one another after you influence the actions earlier in the round. Placement of units and maybe itemization or abilities that these characters have are the key components to winning an auto chess game. These ones may be a little harder to explain without some visual aid, so here is an example of the most popular auto chess game, Teamfight Tactics, a game which I have some experience with. Welcome to the computer again. This game right now that you're seeing is Teamfight Tactics, one of my favorite strategy games to play. It is an auto chess game, as I've briefly explained earlier. And right now we just have one unit, and he's fighting perfectly fine. That is Gangplank from League of Legends. And now, as you'll see in just a second, there is going to be a shop that pops up on the bottom. So I have 2 gold right now, which means I can buy units. I think I'm going to buy Kale here because, as you can see, they have different units. This one is a duelist, and Kale is also duelist, so if I put them together, they get the duelist trait. And then they can synergize, work together. That ramps their attack speed up, and that's kind of how this game is played, where you, let's see, ooh, that'll help. Essentially, you get units, you slowly increase your economy over time, and then you put more and more units on your field so they can fight for you and eventually win the game. So let's just see how this one goes. Ooh, that's supers right there. Lee Sin and Malphite, that's 2 guys that have the same traits. I'll put them in. So now they have the supers trait, where you only need 3 of them. They do increased damage. I'll see if I can try to do a supers duelist composition. Hopefully that'll get me pretty far. That Vayne looks pretty good. Alright, now she does 3, she has 3 bolts that fire out. So if I can get a tier 3 Vayne, that would be really, really helpful. Alright, this thing is going to get me some pretty good items. Let's see what I get here. Oh, yes! The Obsidian Cleaver. Oh, that's absolutely massive. This'll shred armor and magic resistance. I'm going to give it to you. Okay, let's see if I can... No, not you. Get a tier 3 Kale. There we go. Tier 3 Yasuo, maybe? Or Gangplanks. There he is. Oh man, I'm gonna do so much damage. And with this Obsidian Cleaver, it's really gonna rip through people. Alright. Ooh, he has a Rocket Fist. Oh man. Come on. Come on, Vayne. Ooh, don't die. Don't die. Nice! Still staying on top. It's just me and 4 other guys left. Things are looking good. I don't want to jinx it, but things are really looking good. Alright, here we go. Fingers crossed. Win the game right here. Rocket Fist pulls up Lee Sin instead of any of my actual valuable people. Ooh. Zed's wrecking shop. Vayne, oh, with the spread shot is really getting everybody. That's the last unit, and that is the victory. What a game for me to record for you guys. Yeah, so that's Teamfight Tactics. That's an auto chess game, and we'll go back to me to round out the episode. Now, admittedly, these games have a bit less of a following, and aren't nearly as popular as some of the other genres that I've talked about in the past. However, it doesn't mean that they don't have a following at all. It just means that it's a little bit more niche and maybe a little bit more complex. However, just with any other game, it takes a lot of experience and constantly playing it to get better at it and understand it on an intimate level. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Newhouse Esports Update. Now, we've gone over pretty much every genre there is, because a lot of the games that you see in these esports events fall into one of these genres in at least some manner. However, there is a very big glaring question about esports. What about single-player games? There's so many of them, and I've mentioned them a lot in these episodes where I've been telling you about the genres of video games. In fact, most of the online or competitive settings for these video games originated from a single-player setting, because that's what it originally started out with. Well, single-player games are very much alive in esports, just in a different form of them, and I'll get to that one next week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.